it's clear that Democratic voters are not going to come out and vote for nothing. And 7 months ago, 8 months ago, I know as early as March, I was saying the Democrats need something to run on beyond this stuff. And my idea at the time was the expansion of Social Security. Does not appear to have been enough to help in Alaska.
But we did hear from that guy in Alaska who actually said that on the ground in Alaska, that message wasn't even being pushed that hard.
Right.
Anyway, I mean, it is kind of fascinating because I think in a certain sense it doesn't totally matter. You have to try to capitalize it and say that if you ran a more unabashedly progressive campaign, it would have done better because you would have turned out people and you would have mobilized the base, and that was a huge problem. But it is striking that this wasn't even like a third way Simpson Bowles. It was nothing. It was just
nothing.
like
There
they're crazy.
No
and
national agenda.
I'm not that like Obama. And actually, it was the same way Republicans, just in the reverse. If a Republican ran a race a couple years that said nothing and just, I'm anti-marriage equality, that's it. And obviously, it's much better to be pro-marriage equality and pro-women's rights. But besides that, I mean, I think that was the only thing nationally that Democrats talked about across the board was protecting reproductive access, which is really important. But nothing.
And the minimum wage.
But
the fascinating thing is that the minimum wage passed, and we'll get to the referendum, did very well. I think it swept, but it just did not have the coattails. It just was not associated enough with Democrats, which is, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, because they didn't. There wasn't any.
It doesn't fit a broader narrative. I mean, look,
exactly.
At the end of the day, the bottom line is that the economy is still in the crapper for most people. I think Nikki asked me at like one point, she had read somewhere like what she read off some, I don't know if it was a tweet or something that she had seen, like unemployment below 6% or close, gas under $3 a gallon, stock market through the roof. And she said, like, why isn't this translating? And I'm like, well, you have long-term unemployment. You have people who have left, and wages have been stagnant. People still feel incredible financial insecurity, so it doesn't matter what the number is on the unemployment. $3 gas has only been around for a couple of weeks, and people can hardly notice because of the broader insecurity that they're facing. And a tiny percentage, relatively speaking, of the country has money in the stock market. And so this doesn't animate 3/4 or 2/3 of the electorate.
And then doesn't that put, because besides talking about minimum wage, that is another situation where Republicans could sort of run to the left, because Democrats had to brag about an economic record that isn't actually felt. And then Republicans, while campaigning on things that will make everything worse, could say, hey, those numbers don't tell the whole story.
Sometimes it's just a matter of citing the problem and acknowledging the problem.
And saying those
Obama
numbers don't tell the story.
In Iowa of 2008 or 2007, I guess it was, Obama started pulling away when he started to referring to Social Security. And I didn't, at the time, I still don't like this type of language, but it was effective for him. Referring to a Social Security as being in crisis. Now, he stopped as he went on, but that motivated older voters in Iowa to vote for him. Because the implication is, I've got a solution for it when you name a problem.
Right.
Exit polls pointed to an electorate that very much looked like 2010. Young, non-white electorate largely stayed home. The working class vote, according to Ed Kilgore, I believe it was, defined as voters making less than $50,000 a year, which is a crucial demographic for Democrats, was only 30% of the electorate, which is similar to 2010 when it was 36%. Those voters favored Democrats by a 14-point margin. Party generally wins when that margin approaches 20 points. So, again, you need more of those voters. They have failed to energize those people, the populist message. I mean, it's,
it kind
something
of.
we just say on this program constantly, but that's basically the reality.
I was remembering that, there were a lot of anecdotes like this in 2008. I'm sure some of them were made up, but some of them were probably true, where like somebody's canvassing somewhere in Indiana or Pennsylvania or something, and they'll say, "Who are you voting for?" And the voter would say, in a kind of mind-blowingly racist way, "I'm voting for Obama," as in like the classic example was, "I'm voting for the N-word candidate," right? And the whole what everybody seemed to miss was that the reason that was happening was because somehow even that person was convinced that even though I am comfortable enough to use that word and racist enough to use that word with somebody I don't even know, that this guy's going to do something about my economic state.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to do something about trade or, rebuilding job opportunity. And, if that doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And so what's the incentive?
We also saw Black and Latino percentage for Republicans went up by a couple of points, sort of reverting back to back to 2010, to non-presidential election year. The question is, in 2016, will the Democratic candidate be able to get the numbers that Obama did with Black and Latino voters? Remains to be seen, but let's not get there yet.